if I could start here, Maurice, I know you were going to speak prior to the break, and I don't want to take you too much in a different direction, but I wanted to start here again. I think it's just perfect timing when we talk about what's happening with COVID, and as y'all said, you had to, in a sense, scale very quickly based on everything that was happening because you're kind of positioned perfectly. But from the standpoint of I told parents, please listen in. Here's an opportunity to, maybe get familiar with a company that can, in a sense, give your children culturally relevant information. So one thing that stood out from that cut, it was one of the questions that you asked, and if we could kind of start here, and then we'll weave back to everything that you do. But there was one particular question that says, what type of technologies, learning aids, resources, social media outlets, communities, blogs, YouTube videos does the learner engage or use? The reason that question stood out to me was because me being in an after-school program and trying to figure out, in a sense, the school's trying to figure out what are we going to do with the kids. Here in Atlanta, especially last year, the end of last school year, there was a lot of reports about how good or bad the virtual learning went. And the unfortunate aspects to the schools being thrown into this, in a sense, topsy-turvy world was the idea that they couldn't consider what you just said in that cut. They just kind of had to come up with something that they use massively for all students, but it doesn't engage them based on their learning style. And I think that's, in my opinion, why y'all are particularly positioned to be very successful, if you will, at that time. So I kind of wanted to start there because I think that's what makes you most unique and can really help out any parents listening that may have some students that are still struggling with this virtual learning world. I've even heard parents say, my A student is now barely passing in this new world, and I'm pretty sure the schools being unable to consider those unique learning ways that children learn through their digital is why that kind of stuff is happening. Go ahead, if you will, Maurice.
Well, Smitty, I think I will say that for us, one of the main value systems or one of the value characteristics was being culturally competent. Obviously, we're both African American, and so, and again, going back to our son in a sense, the way sometimes that he learns different than, other folks, and some of it is similar. So, but we feel like we want to make sure that all kids, get as fair of an education as they possibly can get, and so. That was one of the things we valued, is making sure that we're bringing a different type of perspective into the learning environment to capture maybe some kids that, because of the current systems that have been established, capture some of their understanding and help them, move forward on as they matriculate through the education system. So that was something that we definitely wanted to bring to the space because we didn't feel like it was necessarily there. And that goes down to as simple as what images are being shown and what is being portrayed in the actual instruction, especially from a virtual environment. That is very powerful in the engagement of the children into the different activities that are being presented. So that was critical for us to make sure. And it was one of our first big projects was to work on diversity and inclusion for a national education, public charter school. But with that, Jennifer had been doing this with the College Board for quite a while and had gained some of this knowledge. So I'm sure she could add some more depthness to the answer. So I'll pass it to her.
Yeah, so just to talk about, Maurice is exactly right. Imagery was like a big key, is to make sure that many of the kids or the students were able to see themselves in the learning. And so we build customized self-paced courses so kids can essentially, go through different videos. It might be animated videos, but we create animated videos with African-American, folks in both leadership roles as well as environments that they may know culturally. Also, it's important to have professional voiceovers when you're creating videos that they also can relate to the population or learners that you're, engaging. And then language and what types of language that you use, that you're making sure that you're using inclusive, non-biased language. And so those are just some baseline things that we did, but we also wanted to have, students and kids are gaming all the time. They're on cell phones. I mean, they're engaging in information in ways that I know even when I grew up, I did not engage in at all. So that's the one thing that we do. We have to go in and do a really quick assessment of how students or adults are taking in information. And we want to make sure that we're creating e-learning that is customized in a way that they can take it in, and how they would be able to engage in. It may be reading for some people, but it may not be. It may be that they're looking at pictures to create some type of learning engagement. It also means that they may need to use their hands. So we may have to do digital toolkits and things like that. But it's really about, that video that soundbite that you just played was all about one size doesn't fit all. So we have to really work with whomever client or customer we're working with to make sure that we're meeting the needs of their learners.
Now, it sounds amazing. I mean, it sounds